Hello, I'm going to speak in English, so I hope the translators. If I speak too fast, just let me know, because as I'm happy to be here, I tend to speak fast. More near? Okay. So I'm Laura Bужинska, and thank you for introduction. And as it was told, I will approach the matter from the practical side today. And why about storytelling? Because I will explain also a bit where I come from. So, since I'm 11, I live close to Biķernieku forest, and every day if I take public transport or bike, I have to bike past or walk past this place where Jews were killed during Second World War. And then when I was in the 7th class, there was opportunity to write an essay about Holocaust in Latvia. And that was my first time when I encountered the atrocities of what has happened in Latvia during that time. And I remember, like, I was like 13, 14 years old. Like, for 3 months, I was like driving a bus completely. I couldn't watch to the forest when I knew what has happened there. And then talking about my background is why I started to work with refugees. One of my relatives, she was supposed to be in the boat during Second World War, but she was pregnant and her belly was too big, so she didn't manage to get to the boat. And that was one of the reasons which really motivated me to see people who are also arriving to Latvia these days, firstly as humans, because also my grandfather's 2 sisters, they were refugees during World War, and they were relocated to Canada after some time they spent in Germany. And that was like somehow my motivation. And then one of the reasons why also I more actively started to work in I Want to Help Refugees group, because I was living in Hungary for 5 months, and there I also was active in one organization or movement, Migrant Solidarity Group. That's about me. Does anybody know who is he? You know, so idea is that while I was studying in Hungary, I had a multicultural education course, and one day we were talking about history and what families do and how do they tell stories, and then story about this guy came up. Idea is that he's one of the founders of Jobbik Party, which is far-right party in Hungary, and after some time he was there like for many years, and then after some time his granny told him that actually he has Jewish roots, and it completely switched. And then the question is like, what we had like conversation for 1 hour, it was like, why did the granny didn't tell the beginning? Like, because his son helped lots to be part of party which is like far right and anti-Semite we really started to discuss how do families deal with trauma and how and where is the space actually to discuss about these things. And then I was thinking, as also I come from Latvia, and we have also like traumatized society in the past, then I was just thinking if I would be like also like one of my grandfathers died when I was 12, and the other one died when I was 13. So I was just thinking, when does a grandfather talk to the small kid about the roots and what has happened? Because also we have to consider the identity of Jews, as you know for sure, that is the question of being afraid to open up because of what has happened. And this thing about identity and how we express ourselves depending on who we are, that somehow really got me thinking about when we are afraid and when we are not afraid to express who we are. Because the space, if it's provided, maybe then that would help. So yeah, let's get back to 2015. If you remember, then in the springtime there was this big influx of refugees from Syria. And then we all know what happened in Hungary. And then in Latvia in September, one guy who was really eager to do something practical about this xenophobic situation in Latvia, he created the group in Facebook, and in a few months' time it collected more than 1,000 people, and there was like active members. And then what we did, we were thinking like, one is like making statements and saying we are there, but we also want to do something practical. So we at first organized some direct help by donating food or clothes, but then we realized that there needs to be space where we come together and we learn about each other. So what we did, we invited the whole. At that time in Mucerniek, which is the asylum seeker center in Latvia, there lived like around 100 people. So we invited all of them to come to one cultural center in Riga to make food with us, because what connects better than food? So, and not only like afterwards we organized this first event, I realized how lucky we are, because at that time in the center lived people who had some how I called it, bridge language, either English or Russian. So we were able to communicate. And afterwards, when there was more, for example, Syrian families coming, and we organized these events, and there were Syrian families who didn't have this bridge language, then we also invited some volunteers to help us. And here also the third somehow target audience, which is like students from European countries or from third European countries, came in because they were the bridge language holders, or the Arabic or Farsi or other language holders, and they were able to be the bridge themselves between people. So yes, we made this first socializing event, and we made food together. And then afterwards, we also made more events. For example, we made an event where we made gingerbreads together because Christmas were coming. And then one of our core group members at that time, she was a non-formal educator, and she thought that the idea about living libraries could maybe help to make this space, because after organizing 2 events like this, we realized that people can walk by each other, but there's not space where they can really share stories. So method of living library came by, and we made one of them in February. And if you don't know the method, the idea is that we invite humans as libraries or the storytellers. And usually, at first we did that there's 3 rounds of talking, but then we switched to 2 because actually for 3 times to share the story, it's too much for people. So what we did, we modulated the method that 2 rounds of speaking for 15 minutes. And then there's, after the second round, there's a 15-minute break where people still can come up and ask questions. And in the third round, with time, we developed this space, like this circle. Well, afterwards, people come together and we discuss what happened and what they will bring home from today. And that's something what we did. We had an event in Lampa, which is like Democracy Festival, which is happening now for 3 years, I think, in Latvia. It will be also this year. This was the biggest because there was like 10 storytellers or books. So usually we invite, when we organize in this center, up to 5 people, because that's what space allowed. Yes, and we started to make these events in KKC. And this is one of the first evaluation circles. And something that really came up in the circle, there was one lady from America, and she was an immigrant. And what she said in the circle, that in these few hours, this is where I felt more like home. And when we puzzle around the words integration, assimilation, then I was thinking the sense of belonging maybe is the thing what can somehow be more important in all these things, because if you have sense of belonging to the place, then you have agency that you belong, then you also become more active and involved more. So this was really magical, these conversations, or like this sharing circle in the end where people like discussed what they will bring home. And this is like also one of the things, one of the pictures there. And then why storytelling and why we stick to this method, because we realized that it's really important at that time when media was full with all kinds of, it wasn't fake news at that time, there wasn't this name, but at that time like fake information about refugees, we realized it's really important to have, that people have access to real refugees, that they hear real stories without this media in between. And then also this opportunity to just ask questions. And one other thing which is important when you're also invited, like for example, me today here to speak, all of you, I'm obviously nervous. And then people also haven't talked in front of this, they're also nervous. But then if there's like circle of up to 10 people sitting in the same level as them, it opens up people and it's more relaxed. And it's really interesting. One of the I always like to improve things, then I really like to hear critique as well of this event. And one of the events, the critiques was like, but you are like asking them to, in some cases, imagine trauma again and things like that. But idea what I said is that, and what I see when I invited people, that people who were ready to talk, people who were willing to share, people who were more sociable, they were willing to speak and share their experiences, and that's what also helped bring together. And then talking about education, European Association for Education and Adults actually used the material which we produced by saying that Europe, when we talk about education, we also somehow, it always happens, we switch to schools. Oh, the next generation will provide everything, we will school them, there will be these perfect people in the world. But what happens is when people get out of the schools, when people goes out of education systems, also universities, how do we educate or continue growing together with people around? And that's something what this association were telling, that there is not enough non-formal educational spaces for adults. And this was one of the cases in Europe which was for this specific place happening, like because everybody was able to come. We had people who are youngsters and who are also grandmothers, and that was the space where people can really learn. And what really helped is that also I organize other type of events where people come together and discuss things. And also at these events also we have these closing circles what people will bring home, because for some time people were asking me, so what were the conclusions like? And then I was thinking, who am I to tell you what's the conclusions? You have your brain, think themselves yourself. And that's something also, this idea what you will bring home is up to you and your experience in the room, not what I am telling you or somebody else is telling in the room what you have to bring home. And this kind of actually learning circles are popular in Sweden, and they are happening there actually for 100 years. It's called like popular education, where people come together and they discuss things. And I just think that if we really think how to tackle issues like xenophobia, Islamophobia, homophobia, that's the place where these conversations can happen. Because actually, when I read a paper that youngsters, one of the reasons why youngsters in Germany became more right was because there was not enough space where people discuss why things are happening, why the things are there, why it's important to know the history. So this also, I think these places where people can really just ask questions, as we know that there's no stupid questions, the questions like how we answer them, because people need to grow and learn all the time, as we know it's 21st century. So these are also the questions we should have spaces to discuss, no matter how hard they are. Yeah, and if you need some inspiration for methods, so there's all kinds of actually educations in non-formal and formal education where you can get all kinds of inspiration. Because, for example, in peace education, what I really like when we talk about peace in society, actually we can't talk about peace in society. There's this one theory that there's three kind of pieces: inner peace, social peace, and an environmental peace. So if we can't have all three, and we don't work in all three, and we are not taught how to work in each of them, then how we can have peaceful society? And that's something also in Latvia because in peace education also, I really like that they discuss and tackle question of conflict, that conflict is something really normal which we are having. It's like if you have morning tea or coffee, you will also have conflict during the day. And the question is not about the conflict, but the question how we deal with the conflict. And I think in nowadays society, when it's so easy to polarize people, there should be more spaces also where we can discuss places, because also I know in case when I'm part of this, I want to help refugees group, people somehow presume that I'm for for all kinds of things, like I'm for open borders and everything, but actually there's a spectrum. And also these 3,000 people who are in the group, they are not thinking like one, and that's something also we need to consider. So, because identity, as we know, is like what we think of ourselves and what others think of ourselves. And there's a video actually for 3 minutes I can show you afterwards. And this, thank you for the opportunity for me to be here.